Hello, I'm Georgina Old and this is my vlog on moral panic. What is moral panic? It's the intensity of feeling expressed in the media about an issue that appears to threaten the social order. So whether something's a moral panic or not depends entirely upon how the public receive the information that the media portray out to them. According to theory, there are many different ways that we can receive information. One theory is the hypodermic needle model. This was developed in the 1920s. The model suggests that the intended message of the media is simply injected straight into our brains without conflict. We simply accept it straight away. We're univocal, uniform and homogeneous in the way that we receive information, and we don't challenge it in any way, shape or form. Particular pieces of media that support this idea are propaganda items that Stalin and Hitler used in World War II. Another theory is the two-step theory. This suggests that we never receive the information from the media as simply the information, but we rather receive someone's interpretation of it. So, for example, you have an information leader, say a writer. You then have the opinion leader. You then have the media that they created, and that's when it reaches the audience. The uses and gratifications theory implies that we only absorb media for our own personal gain, within 4 categories. The first category is information. We're simply trying to satisfy our curiosity. The second is personal identity. We always look out for role models, it's part of our nature. Another is integration. We are social creatures. We want to talk to the people around us. This is why there's been such a huge development in social networking sites. Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram. And lastly, simply to entertain us. Another theory is the cultivation theory. This was created by Gerbner and Gross to suggest that one piece of media does not have a lasting effect on a person. However, constant exposure to sex or violence can do. We simply become desensitized to it, accepting it as the norm. Because of this, we can accept that media does have an effect on our behaviour and ideals. However, we cannot measure the extent that one piece of media would have on a person. Finally, the reception analysis theory. This indicates that each individual receives information differently due to their values, opinions and life experiences. The first way that you can receive it is dominant or preferred. You accept the intended message without any conflict. Secondly is oppositional. You oppose or reject the intended message completely and come up with a message of your own. And thirdly is negotiated. The intended message is recognised and acknowledged, however, you manipulate it slightly to bring your own message to the media that you're watching. Negotiated reception can also be referred to as participatory or active, meaning that the person engages with the message as we all see things through the prism of our own backgrounds and experiences. A factor that will greatly affect the way that someone receives information is their cultural competence. This is the ability to understand the way that others would view the information rather than just how they receive it themselves. Fan culture is a subculture composed and characterised by a feeling of unity from love of a specific piece of media. These reception theories have led to behavioural studies to see how people act under different circumstances. One of these is Skinner's reinforcement theory in the 1920s, which was actually portrayed in Clockwork Orange. This positive reinforcement came about when Skinner created his box. Now the box had a rat inside and a button, and whenever the rat pushed the button, a piece of cheese would be put into the box. Now of course a rat wouldn't think to push the button. However, it would accidentally run across the button and the cheese would come out, and the rat soon learned that whenever it was hungry, it could push that button and a piece of cheese would come out, causing it to have completely unnatural behaviour that it did on a daily basis. This is also what was used in Clockwork Orange in the film to demonstrate how Alex was conditioned to be good rather than choosing to be bad. Another experiment was Milgram's authority experiment in 1962. He put people in a very awkward situation where he'd have a test subject and he told them that there was somebody else on the other side of the screen, and whenever they got a question wrong, the test subject had to push the button to electrocute the person on the other side. The more wrong answers you got, the more of an electric shock you got. Seems quite simple. However, they had an actor on the other side of the screen that would act to be in pain every time that the electric shock was administered. This of course put the test subjects in a very awkward situation, knowing that they should do this test. However, they really didn't want to inflict any more pain upon the subject. The results of this test were absolutely astonishing. It showed that the presence of an authority figure, a doctor in this case, caused the men to push themselves far further than they normally would. 65% of subjects administered the experiment's final massive 450-volt shock. Many participants were displaying discomfort throughout the experiment. Behaviours such as sweating, trembling, stuttering, biting their lips, groaning, digging their fingernails into their skin, nervous laughing fits, and even seizures. This experiment has been repeated multiple times around the world, showing very, very similar results. Right, so think moral panics. The first that I'd like to talk about is Anthony Burgess' Clockwork Orange. The book was released in 1962 and didn't really cause much of a fuss among the media or among the general public. However, Kubrick's Clockwork Orange, a film based on Anthony Burgess' book, was released in 1972 and caused huge outrage among society. So why was the book accepted but not the film? Simply, they were presented in a very different manner. An example of this is the rape scene. In the film, Alex is singing in the rain, while raping the female character in her house and throwing items around for the sake of it, as if the act is a game or a play. However, in the book, it's presented in a very different manner. The books describe the events almost in a matter-of-fact way, as though it's simply a process. There's no singing involved, however, great analysis from Alex on what the writer was creating happened to be a book called The Clockwork Orange. This was far less violent than the film, reinforcing the two-step theory that I spoke about earlier. The film that the audience received was Kubrick's interpretation of the book, not the book itself. The reaction is believed to have been amplified because of the culture of the time. There were only 3-day working weeks, a rise in youth culture, and relaxed censoring laws within the media. Clockwork Orange was seen to be a true zeitgeist of the time. This was obviously a very complicated time, and there was a lot of violence, a lot of youth culture coming about. There hadn't been teenagers before 1970s, so this scared a lot of people. A lot of people, because of the film that was released, were getting ephebophobia, there were a fear of young people, and a lot of people also used Clockwork Orange as an excuse for the violent acts that they were doing. Kubrick and his family were having people dressed as the characters in Clockwork Orange show up at his door and making death threats. This led to the film being removed from distribution until 1999. Another film that was considered a zeitgeist in the 1970s was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, released in 1975. Critics states that the on-screen battle between Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher serves as a personal microcosm of the culture of the 1970s, quoted by Rotten Tomatoes. It was also described as culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the US Library of Congress. And finally, Reservoir Dogs is another moral panic medium. This was released 2 decades later in 1991, however is possibly part of the reason why Clockwork Orange was re-released in 1999. The film consists of unnerving violence, even showing a policeman getting his ear cut off, and showing a number of characters and their paranoia towards each other because of the situation that they're in. This highlights a clear gang culture, similar to that shown in 1970s Clockwork Orange. Again, similar to Kubrick's Clockwork Orange, there is a scene containing light-hearted music whilst the character is torturing the policeman. Palpable to enthusiasm, unapologetic passion for his creation reinvigorates this vulnerable plot, and mayhem aside, makes it involving for longer than you might expect, is a quote by critic James Berardinelli. In conclusion, I believe that the media does affect the audience in some way. However, I do not believe it to be to the extent that many theories indicate. I think that if a person has a fascination with a topic, it will affect the media that they choose to expose themselves to. This may lead to them exposing themselves to more graphic media in time. However, any fascination with a topic leads to research becoming more and more in-depth. Porn doesn't cause sexual fantasies. Sexual fantasies causes a need to watch porn. The fascination with action causes a market for violent video games, not the other way over. Media is simply a reflection of the needs of the audience, whether conscious or subconscious, rather than the creator of their ideals, which is why zeitgeists are so effective. It's a true piece of art that shows the sign of the times, and if you can do that, you reach out to such a wide audience, which is why so many great films are zeitgeists. This is why they're successful. People want to watch it because they can relate to it, because they're fascinated by the things that go on in current affairs of that time. I think that that's why there are moral panics out there, because if the truth of that time isn't something that's positive, then people simply don't want to know. So that's my vlog on moral panic. Thank you.